Rachel Herrera, and we're back with another episode of Data Detective. In this episode, we're going to dive into why BI just doesn't do a great job of customer journey analytics, kind of the exact technical reasons why, and also just some things to think about. I'll talk about potential solutions. Spoiler alert, Kubit will be one of them, but hopefully this episode gives you a good idea and understanding of why even tools like Kubit exist and can sit next to other tools in BI stacks like Tableau, PowerBI, Looker, etc. So let's dive in. The big question we want to answer is, why is BI so bad at customer journey analytics? And just to make sure we're all on the same page, when I say customer journey analytics, I mean things like funnels, paths, cohorts, retention. So getting at the heart of how users are navigating your digital product. Most of the time, a company is going to have a pretty well-built, well-used BI stack. And what does BI do better than anybody else? Because they've been around for such a long time. They're incredible tools. You know, you've got the Tableaus, Power BIs, Looker, Sigma, Newcomer, Hex. They're all doing amazing things because they've got, beautiful dashboarding capabilities, and you can, publish things out into the cloud so members of your team can get access to it. And it's all governed and it's secure. I'm going to draw my little lock here. And so it's great for specific use cases. And when I say specific use cases, I mean, hey, I want to count revenue by quarter, and maybe this is dollars, and I get beautiful bar charts of my revenue going up and down and up over this time period. And then maybe I actually want to apply like some filtering to it, and I want to say, hey, I only want to see this by the United States. That's all well and good. And it does a fantastic job of it. It even does a great job of getting the same information, but maybe you want to break it down by some variables, like different countries. And so it'll give you that information, but maybe some of these are going to be colored differently based on the countries they represent, so you can understand share of your revenue. It does all of this kind of operational reporting and revenue reporting, really like just a fantastic job of it, because that's what it was built for originally. But when we think about maybe going into other tools like a Sigma or a Hex, what's great about them is they're even getting end users closer to this like almost like spreadsheet-like experience where you've got all these different rows and columns of data, and now you're able to interact with your CDW or your cloud data warehouse similar to how you would interact with like an Excel or a Google Sheets. And so this gives data analysts and people a lot of flexibility and power to go in and create really rich tables, add those different filters, etc. But where does this fall short? You're looking at this and you're saying, Rachel, what BI sounds great. What do you mean it can't do this? Well, unfortunately, all of this data is requiring a company to do specific things with it. And the first of that is to aggregate it. And when a company has to aggregate their data, they lose the detail. So it becomes, less specific. Let's see if I can spell specific correctly. And what used to be a table of maybe thousands of rows becomes a table of maybe only 100. And why that's good is the speed and the performance of a dashboard like the ones above are now much faster, because when you query that same report and you want to get your revenue by quarter, and I get my little bars, and then I want to apply one of those little filters to it, when I hit that filter, now I'm only hitting a table of 100 rows. And so it's a lot faster, a lot more responsive. You get that great zippy feeling that you get when you go and filter one of these dashboards. What this also means is, in this kind of like transition layer here, there's a lot of ETL or aggregation that needs to happen. So what may have been a great place, in this table to understand every single interaction for a specific user now just becomes a single number. And so it becomes really difficult to know, well, okay, I get that we had 500 users click a button that day, but what else of those users, what else did they do? These questions become really hard to answer when you're dealing with this kind of like much more aggregated data set, because you lose all of that specificity. What's also something that they struggle with is the kind of use cases that I'm talking about here, like a funnel, for example. I have these 50 users that did, let's say, a login event. And then I need to understand how many of them went on to do the checkout event. And then of the checkout event, how many of them actually went on to purchase? And then of those who purchased, how many of them purchased again, for example? To know that the same users are being counted at every step of this funnel, which is that's the central theme of a funnel. I can't simply count how many people did log in, how many people did check out, how many people did purchase, and how many people purchased again in a time period, because I'm not guaranteed to understand that those are the same people. I could have had a day where a ton of people decided to check out, but none of them logged in. Or maybe they purchased, but none of them purchased again. That's all really important context that I need to know to understand if maybe this experience is broken or I'm not getting the right users at the right place within my workflows. So when we talk about a funnel, now we need to know these same 50 users that we started with. Did 10 of them go into checkout? And then did 5 of them purchase? And then did 3 of them go on and purchase again? Those steps are really complicated SQL. It's SQL that is this query joined to this query, joined to this query, joined to this query, looking at kind of like +1 steps all sequenced together. And it can get really hairy. And BI does not support this very well, if at all. I think it's probably possible if you can sort of break it a little bit, but then it becomes really fragile. And then it's like, oh, well, actually, I don't want the purchase event in here anymore. I want it to be, an add to cart. Now, if I change that, does the underlying SQL break? Probably. So you need a really robust system that's able to handle the SQL generation for this kind of work, because ultimately this becomes a very tedious task and very expensive. Also, same can be said for pathing. There's a pretty gnarly question to be asked of, instead of, hey, I know the sequence of events that the users are going through, how many of them went from the login to that purchase? And what did they do in between? So now when we talked about our table at the top with the 1,000 rows, and now when we talk about our table with those 1,000 rows, we need all 1,000 of them because they're all going to tell us what happened here in between these two events. We can't aggregate anything at this point. We have to have it down to not just the user, but the timestamp. And so the volume of data increases exponentially when you want to get into this sort of behavioral type analysis. And BI tools, they don't want to do that. They don't handle that very well. And frankly, the SQL under the hood isn't sophisticated enough to support either of these things. It's going to require some kind of special custom stuff that again might break. So this is why BI tools, when you get into this sort of lane of use cases, really struggle. And then you're forced to go do custom SQL work outside of your BI tool or buy something off the shelf that's maybe not even connected to your warehouse. And when you do that, then you lose the ability to kind of guarantee the insights, because now your BI dashboards that you created up here in this step are reading different data than your funnels that you're creating somewhere else. And that's a problem. So what do we do about it? What's the alternative? Now, not just because I work for Kubit, I genuinely think this solves a real problem in a really amazing, cool way. Kubit and other tools like it, kind of think of CJA, Customer Journey Analytics, and the term that a lot of them use is warehouse native. Live within the warehouse. So you've got your CDW here in the middle, and it's connecting to these tools. In this case, we'll just use Kubit as an example, of course. And what Kubit does is it reads the warehouse data. It's not copying anything. It's not moving data. It's simply running that really sophisticated SQL. But Kubit's purpose-built for those kinds of use cases. Other tools like it in the CJA space that are interested in using it directly from the warehouse. Even experimentation tools are starting to do this. Tools like EPO or CDPs and marketing automation, marketing platforms like High Touch are taking this approach because it guarantees that you're generating insights off of the shared source of truth of the data warehouse. But because these tools are purpose-built for these specific use cases, now you can get at the SQL and it can be really robust, and you don't have to go write it yourself every single time. And so in tools like Kubit, you can go back to that, big funnel example where we've got our 50 users down to 10, down to 3, down to 5. The SQL generated under the hood here is gnarly, but you don't have to worry about it. And what's nice is that SQL is run directly on your warehouse. And so this is why these tools were even created in the first place, is to solve this sort of two-pronged problem of there's teams out there that need to have these questions answered. They need to understand how are people moving through the product. Another big one that I didn't even mention yet is cohorting. So, hey, we've got this funnel of all these users who, let's say, converted in step 3. Tell me more about them. How do I create a group of those users so that I can learn more about what else they're doing in our product? What other paths are they taking, etc. If I'm in a BI tool, yes, I can click into a data point, but I can't take the information from that single data point and then put it into another analysis. And so that is the infinitely cool part about these kinds of tools, is I can theoretically click into this step of my funnel, go and build, let's say, a path report that gives me, all my different user journeys and paths. This is going to be an ugly path report, sorry. And then I can filter it by these users and say, hey, only give me results of this path for users who converted on step 3. The analysts that are listening to me know how complicated that SQL is. So the idea that you can do that in a UI directly from your warehouse is really freaking cool. So some stuff to think about, kind of consideration. I don't think BI needs to go away or be replaced in any sense of the term. I think that there is a very clear kind of like BI plus JA and kind of a better together story that gives you that full customer experience from not just the what were they doing, which is the CJA part. So kind of how I like to split that up is, what's happening, meaning what are the literal actions happening within our user base, and then BI is going to give you that what happened. Looking backwards in time, show me how the results of these efforts, these things that we're doing to improve the customer journey materialized in things like revenue, etc. All the things that need to be canonical and singular in where they're reported on, which BI is purpose built for and perfect for, to be quite frank. So this is how we see the world. I think it's a really kind of exciting prospect that it kind of gives that full scope of control and experience to all the different layers of the business. It's still consuming information from that central cloud data warehouse. So you've got that trust and that security at the center of every time you ask a question of your data. So let us know what you think, if this sounds interesting. Also would love to understand if you agree. I think where I started my career was in BI. So I have huge, enormous respect for it. But curious to hear if you guys see the world in the same way.